Let's pick things up there for tonight's Dateline Defense. Joining me, Matthew Brodsky, Director of Policy for the Jewish Policy Center. The Obama administration turned to top officials, not only in Egypt, but also in Israel and Turkey, to call for democracy and transparency in Egypt. Matt, what steps will Israel take to ensure that this happens?
Well, let's start with Turkey. The Turkish government has really welcomed the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and that's a different position than you've seen from Israel. Turkey has been supporting the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the region, so they have really been hoping that a coalition of Muslim Brotherhood states would come to the fore, that they would be able to be a leader of that form of coalition. So what has occurred in Egypt recently has actually been, a very bad thing as far as the Turkish government is concerned. And that is something to bear in mind, because we've been seeing these protests happening throughout Turkey, and part of what the people are complaining about is the growing Islamification of the Turkish government. Now, as for Israel, they can't actually ensure that there's democracy or transparency and that it will take hold in Egypt. That's beyond its ability. But I'm sure that Israel would like to stop being blamed for the problems in the region, and they would welcome all forms of stability all around them.
Now, Israel shares a border with Egypt, as we know. It's been a relatively safe area for more than 3 decades. Give us some historical context.
Well, the Sinai hasn't been as safe as it could be in the past 5 years, and this predates the revolution in 2011, going back to Mubarak. It has been a place where these days Al-Qaeda has been infiltrating, and you have Iran has been working with Sudan to ship weapons in through the Sinai into the Bedouins there that go across into Gaza. You have the weapons that have been unleashed from Libya since the fall of Gaddafi. Those weapons have been going through the Sinai and into Gaza, and also into Syria and elsewhere in the region. So there's really been a problem with weapons moving through the Sinai Peninsula, and Israel and Egypt, at least as far as the Egyptian military is concerned, they both agree or do not like Hamas and do not want to see the lawlessness that has been creeping up in Sinai. So for that is something they would like to continue to work together on.
Now, the Israelis are watching this very closely. Are the weapons the biggest issue? What else are the Israelis concerned about?
It's overall the stability of the region. They don't have any internal ability to affect what is happening on the ground inside of their neighbors, least of all in Egypt. So they would welcome stability, and I think that they would remind people, as one of their politicians had before, Natan Sharansky, that free elections are the culmination of the democratic process. They are not the start of a democratic process. So it should be kept in mind that when people call for elections in Egypt to happen immediately, there's no guarantee the same thing won't happen again. So the democratic process must go on. Hopefully those that are liberal-minded in Egypt can coalesce around a candidate and put one forward, rather than running 5 or 6 different candidates against a single Muslim Brotherhood candidate. And remember,
the problem is it was winner takes all. Morsi didn't include any other groups except the Brotherhood, and then there was no method for a recall election or new elections once he was in.
Exactly.
Now,
with
meanwhile,
only 51%.
Right. A huge U.S. diplomatic effort is now underway. Secretary of State John Kerry spent much of his first months in office trying to revive Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Bring us up to date on that.
Well, Secretary Kerry has used a tremendous amount of his political capital basically being a messenger between Netanyahu and Abbas, the Israelis and the Palestinians. It's a bit mind-boggling, actually, because he's carrying these messages to and from the different leaders. Both these leaders are very capable of talking to each other and would sit down at the table if they wanted to. Now, at the same time, looking around the other regional capitals, you look at Damascus, Cairo, Beirut, Ankara, even in Amman, Jordan, there's a lot of political unrest, and Kerry has not adequately addressed that, if it's being addressed at all. So this is largely an exercise, I believe, in futility, because I don't think the negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis are going to go anywhere right now. I don't think it's possible in a climate where Islamists are on the rise throughout the entire region. It would be a kiss of death to Abbas, who would never be able to have a Jewish state independently living alongside him. So it's missed priorities, I believe.
It's very problematic. This month, Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, announced he will step down. How will that impact these negotiations?
It'll have no impact on the negotiations, but Michael Oren has been definitely a terrific ambassador and did the job extremely well. The word is that apparently Ron Dermer is going to be named the next one. If so, he was a former advisor to Netanyahu, and 15 years ago he moved to Israel from Florida. And I'm sure he will do a fantastic job as well. There's always been a special relationship between Israel and the United States, and the ambassador has always been at the forefront in that role.
Thanks for the update tonight. Matthew Brodsky, Director of Policy for the Jewish Policy Center. We'll see you next time.